What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Waste World Podcast. My name is Gage Edwards. I'm your host, and today we are back with another of Waste360's 40 Under 40 award-winning features, a spotlight on one of our award winners. Today we're talking with Cameron Douglas, lead project manager at AMP. Cameron has grown alongside AMP's rapid evolution and now helps lead some of the industry's most ambitious recycling infrastructure projects. Cam was a great guest on the show, and hopefully you'll learn something from him, one of our 40 Under 40 award winners. Obviously, he's got the knowledge. He knows what he's doing. He's a winner. He's an award winner. There's some responsibility with that. So if you like the episode, make sure you subscribe to the episode on your podcasting service of choice. Check out more episodes from waste360.com and on our YouTube page for the video version, and share the episode with a friend. All right, thanks for watching. Well, Cam, thanks for being here. I wanted to just to quickly start off, if people don't know who you are, before we jump into the rest of this, can you give me a quick rundown of who you are, a little bit about your story, and then we'll get into the crux of why we're here today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Cam Douglas. I'm the lead product manager at AMP. I've been at AMP for close to 8 years at this point, which is a significant portion of the company's lifespan, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. Yeah, thank you. My background is actually in mechanical engineering. So the first 5-ish years at the company, moved from mechanical engineering intern into the product team about 3 years ago. And before that, was in undergrad at MIT and actually was mainly focused on sports technology engineering and fell in love with more general product design while there, and transitioned into that work more fully when I was completing my master's, and then started an internship at AMP out in Colorado. Not the most typical transition, I think, from sports technology into waste technology, but definitely one I was excited to make, and I'm super happy I did get to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, we're not talking most technical jumps into waste. Again, here I am with all this behind me, and now I'm talking waste all the time. Very different. It's sports technology. I'm a big sports guy. We talk sports on the show a little bit. We might have to dive into that too. But I do want to say congratulations winning the Waste360 40 Under 40 award. It's kind of why we're here today. I'd like to know, what does this recognition mean to you at this point in your career? 8 years with AMP, the jump from sports technology to where you are now. Like, what does this mean to you?
Yeah, thank you a bunch, and to the whole team at Waste360. It definitely means a lot. I think it's always conflicting feelings of being excited to be, nominated by my peers for the award, and then actually being awarded the award is definitely a great feeling. But we are still a relatively small company, and despite that, I think all the work that I've done is, with and for other people within the organization, and so feels great to have an individual honor, but I think more so just speaks to the overall progress that the company and the team as a whole have made. And also feels a little funny just because I feel like we're, despite being around for about a decade at this point, still in the early stages of accomplishing what we eventually want to accomplish. And so, hopefully I, personally look back on this as like an exciting moment in my relatively young career, but then more broadly, hopefully it ends up feeling like it was also kind of at the start of something great for AMP as we continue to develop here.
Yeah, AMP's going to look at you as like, he's one of the big stepping stones we had early on. Now we're moving on up. He's an award winner,
That's the goal. That's the goal.
All right. So alongside growing with AMP, so during this incredible expansion, looking back, what's it been like to watch both of your career and the company evolve together over time?
I think it's been extremely rewarding, and I think the fact that AMP has had multiple phases and has grown so much over the past decade has been a big reason why I've stayed with the company. It's been, I think, just as both personally and professionally rewarding to work on the actual technology development, and then now the full facility design, and work with our operations teams on the O&M aspects of our projects nowadays, as it has been to actually experience the growth of a startup from pre-Series A when I joined, now through Series D fundraise a couple of years ago. And I think just seeing a company go through different phases of growth, both in terms of concrete specific pivots from starting as a robotic company selling point solutions into existing MRFs to now today designing and then operating our own facilities from the ground up with a bigger focus on municipal solid waste than we've had in the past. Actually, seeing how the company has been built and gone through those different phases has been extremely interesting, just from an actual management and infrastructure perspective. And it's also enough time that it's been really interesting to see the actual world of waste evolve around that, particularly as it relates to recycling, of course, which is kind of our core competency, but then also looking at new organics processing technologies that are emerging. And there is, I would say, never a dull day in the world of waste, despite the fact that on
Agreed.
the surface, from someone who's not in the industry, it might seem like more mundane than it actually is. And so I think the combination of all those things has been, a big reason I've stayed at AMP and within the waste industry is just the dynamicism of the company and the
Hmm.
industry. And I think it's, certainly had an impact on my career. I feel way more prepared. If I were to go and work for a small company again in the future, I feel way more prepared to help AMP scale. And yeah, I've enjoyed it a ton.
That's great. Yeah, I guess the industry moves pretty quickly. How fast does this compare to some of the other things that just happened? Like pretty fast, right?
Definitely very fast. I think there's always so much going on. Like there's an element of controlled chaos in the waste industry, I feel
Yeah, I like
like.
that word. Yeah.
Yeah. Where there's so many major players in the space, and now especially there's a lot of startups, small companies coming into this industry from all sorts of angles, whether it's on the actual sorting side and the technology side, or it's on organics processing. There's just never a moment of rest, it feels like, both in terms of the competition within the industry and then the ways in which it is changing, which are both really exciting. And again, coming from a completely different field in the world of sports, there's some parallels there, obviously, since there's just direct competition all the time
Hmm.
within the sports industry. But to see that, I think, borne out in an industry that I had initially perceived as, either more set in its ways or as one that wasn't super dynamic has been really, really interesting to see.
Yeah, I think your basic household just was like truck shows up on
Yeah.
Thursday every week. That's the waste industry to me. Like,
Yep.
well, it's a lot deeper than that. And
Yes.
maybe let's talk to some of those people who don't know. And we have listeners through all scopes of the waste industry from all walks of life and people who are even trying to move up, people who are listening to this conversation because of the 40 under 40 award and thinking, how can I get there? Let's talk a little bit about what your role is as a lead product manager, what you do, and how do you bridge the gap between technology, operations, and customer needs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will start with the caveat that product manager means a lot of different things at a
Sure,
lot of
yeah.
different companies.
We just slap that title on a few of you, right?
Yeah. And AMP is generally, I would say, structured more similarly to a more traditional technology company than
Mm.
some more typical waste companies that you would see. And so for AMP, at least, in the work that we do, product plays a role that is somewhat similar to what you would see for product managers at tech companies, with the caveat that we're still a small team. And so very often we just become designated hitters for whatever needs to get done at the time. But I would say my role primarily focuses on identifying customer needs within the waste industry and then making sure that our suite of products are set up and our technologies are developed in a way that actually meets those needs. And to make that completely abstract sentence more practical, so we AMP now design and then operate waste sorting facilities of a different variety. And really, we have different types of customers, whether it is other companies within the waste industry, private and public companies, or municipalities themselves. They all have different needs for what their sorting requirements are. Some of them want to optimize diversion. Some of them want to optimize recovery rate for specific materials or material purity in their offtakes. And my role at AMP is to effectively get in front of those customers, talk to those customers about their needs, and translate the general marketplace needs into our actual facility and technology offerings. And also within AMP, do a fair amount of actual individual project work. And so for specific customers. We'll help our engineering and our operations team actually craft a full proposal and a product to offer that customer that meets their specific needs. So definitely some longer term kind of structural aspects of the role, but then also some more tactical role and engagement with specific customers along the way.
Nice. Well, let's talk about some of the projects that AMP has done and like the partnership with the Southeastern Public Service Authority of Virginia. What made that project so significant, and what are some of the biggest challenges your team had to solve to make that a reality?
Yeah, well, it definitely is significant since it will be one of the largest waste sorting projects, definitely in the US, if not the world, when it's
Mhm.
fully come to fruition here. That is definitely significant just on its own. For AMP, it's our largest project that we've contracted to date, and so also significant just for the growth of the company and what it means for our ability to scale into future projects as well. Um, I think what made the project or has made the project both so challenging and so rewarding has been um, the level to which we've had to understand the actual specific dynamics of SIPSA's waste shed. So even before we got to the proposal phase for the project, we did a lot of work trying to understand, what are their existing logistics? What are the makeup of the communities within SIPSA? What does the lifespan of their landfill look like? And what are the alternatives that they have for waste disposal in the region? Since they're primarily focused on extending the life of their landfill through diversion of different aspects of the municipal solid waste stream. And then also pairing that with what do the local regulations look like and what does the local infrastructure look like for different types of organics processing, since that is a significant portion of the MSW stream. And I think it was one of those things where we had some preconceived notions about what our final solution for the waste shed would look like when we didn't know that much about it. And then, got boots on the ground, got to see the waste ourselves, got to understand the communities and the actual existing infrastructure there and realized, oh, if we want to come up with a solution that is as cost effective for these communities as possible, we have to do a lot of work and understand the current state of affairs there and what both the authority's goal in SIPSA for the actual project and the solicitation, but then also SIPSA itself, still serves their member communities, and so trying to understand what the member communities wanted to get out of the project as well. And that I think is a lot to take in when you are trying to simultaneously respond to a public solicitation for a project. And so it was definitely a lot of busy months getting prepared to respond to the solicitation and the RFP. And then now that we're actually into the implementation phase of the project, I personally feel like some of the weight has been lifted, since I would much rather be in execution mode as opposed to waiting to hear back about a project, being awarded or not. But obviously there are a lot of challenges that we're working through and a lot of really interesting opportunities as well. Actually going to implement waste sorting infrastructure of this scale. And we're super excited about the actual deployment of the project over the next couple of years here. And have already started processing some of the waste from SIPSA's region just in our existing MSW sorting facility that we have in Portsmouth there. And so um, every day more work seems to pile up, but every day feeling more excited about the project and feel way more confident in the challenges that come along with it.
Awesome. Great. All right. And I want to jump into as the 40 under 40 awards are happening, we get to hear from teams about their colleagues and why they're good at stuff and why they should be recognized. And of course, we heard about that of you as well. I'd like to know before we jump into that though, sports management technology you said earlier?
Just sports technology. No,
Sorry.
no
Yeah, no
management
management.
on
Yeah.
my end.
Sports technology. Do you have a fandom? Are you a big fan of anyone specifically?
Yeah, so I grew up in Boston or just outside Boston in Concord and still live in the area in Cambridge here. And so I'm just primarily a diehard Boston sports fan. And
Mm.
also, I think being inherent to being a member of the 40 under 40 specifically for this award means that I've gotten to experience probably some of the highest highs of sports fandom in the US, just with the
Yeah.
runs that we've been on.
Now learning this, we might have to take this away from you. I'm not I'm not sure we can let I'm a Ravens and Orioles fan. Of course, the
Okay.
Orioles just wrapped up in a series with the Red Sox, and glad they didn't break the record for franchise wins in a row there. Anyway,
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
colleagues have described you as someone who can translate highly technical systems into practical solutions for customers and public sector partners. How important is it to you when it comes to communication, introducing new technology into an industry that often relies on like long-standing processes? People who the old guard don't understand the new stuff. What's that communication like, and how important is it?
Yeah, I think it's critical for multiple reasons for AMP. I think one is at the company level, we started as a point solutions provider for existing facilities as AMP Robotics, and then have a completely new business model, new set of capabilities technically, and a new operations team. And there's a lot of folks that we still interact with despite making this transition a few years ago who still think of us as AMP Robotics and think of us as the pick and place robot company and one of
Mhm.
the early computer vision system companies. And we are definitely still all of those things to an extent, but it is, I think, a messaging and a marketing battle to also present the new AMP just from a pure volume of communications perspective, and having folks from our commercial team get out in the field and interact with as many people as possible, and then having a great online presence. From a technology perspective, there's also the interesting element of probably 10 or 15 years ago, like the term AI didn't really mean something super specific to a lot of people. And so I remember being with our CTO and founder, Matanya, talking with customers, and they didn't quite understand exactly what it meant for to have an AI-based computer vision system and like what the actual mechanics underlying that were. So there was a lot of explaining what the system did and what it didn't do. And then more recently, AI has just become synonymous with like ChatGPT and large language models and Claude and all of these other things. And so now we are not necessarily explaining what the technology is, but also why it is not the thing that you colloquially associate with being AI and online accessibility tools. Um, the other aspect, I think, as well, is it's, I think the misperception that being set in your ways is a negative thing for growth in the future. At least in my mind, I think people always react to the incentives that they're given. And so for folks who have been in the industry for a long time, especially, and also, I'm sure someone who met me for the first time, having been in the industry for less time, would say the same thing. Like the concept that someone is set in their ways, I think, is mainly just a reaction to the incentives that they have been provided. And so the world of waste is changing pretty quickly now, and I think AMP just happens to be in a really exciting place to kind of catch the tailwinds of change, specifically as it relates to changing attitudes and also economics around landfill diversion and sorting of municipal solid waste and organic waste specifically. And so when we're communicating with people about our technology and our product offerings, both at a more tactical individual sorting device level, but then also at like a larger scale, our full facilities can do X for you, or they can do Y for you in terms of diversion and commodity revenue. Um, I often find like the most useful topics are the ones where you are actually able to explain the incentives and the reasoning behind um, our products themselves. And I think a lot of times that tees up discussions about the actual underlying technology really well. And I think makes someone more open to talking about it and learning about it if they see it as something that can provide value to them, as opposed to just being this new fancy way of doing the same thing. Because if you ask someone to accomplish the same thing with a new tool that they're unfamiliar with, you do typically get the response of, well, the existing tool I have already works. And I say this all the time in my personal life. And so I definitely know that I fall victim to that mentality as well. But it also totally makes sense from my perspective. And so it's been a really interesting process, I think, to not necessarily try to change the way people think about their existing tools, but to change the way that they think about the problems and underlying opportunities that are coming up in the near future.
Right, right. Yeah, introducing tools like AI and stuff, I'm sure is a challenge for a lot of people because they're, well, hey, it's not broke. Why try and fix it? It's like, well, okay, well, the problem is this, but we could do it this way and kind
Yeah.
of repurpose your tools in a more efficient way and without being like totally over their head, totally replaced. But also, you're handing a person a new tool. They're like, okay, but now you need to know how to use it because you can't just
Yes.
like it doesn't just know everything right away. You got to teach this
Yeah.
thing or something.
Yeah, and I think there's also a healthy amount of skepticism in the waste
Mm,
industry.
hmm.
I think for both very reasonable and positive reasons, and then maybe also some lightly negative reasons. But I think that skepticism a lot of the times boils down to a, prove it to me mentality from folks that you're talking to that have been in the industry for longer than I have. And I think one huge benefit we've had kind of growing as a company has been the ability to set up pilot facilities, to have our robots installed at customer sites, not only in North America, but around the globe. And that's given us an opportunity to not only, make promises about our technology, but then also instead of telling someone about it, we can also have them visit a facility in Portsmouth, or we can have them visit a robot or a vision system in a city or a town or a facility that's close to them. And actually seeing it with your own eyes definitely helps you actually believe that it is real.
Hmm.
Uh, I think particularly for emerging technologies and very small scale startups, there's often uh, apprehension about something being vaporware, and I think we're kind of finally getting over the hump of people believing that what we say we can do, we are capable of doing, which is great.
Right. I like to think waste collection is such a historic, long-running industry, right? It's one of the oldest jobs that exists. And I just like to think, like, just talking to those ancestors, like, okay, yeah, we're gonna go see the robot facility and look at how it controls our waste. Like, wow,
Yep.
we've come a really long way.
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
and then we're seeing that AI excitement. And from your perspective, what do you think of those technologies and where they're making the biggest impact in recycling facilities, and where do you think they're being underutilized?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a couple areas that I see the most opportunity for AI. One, ironically, despite just calling a differentiation between like large language models and agentic tools like ChatGPT and Claude and everything, and computer vision implementations of AI, I actually do think that on the process management and interaction with recycling and sorting systems side of things, the ability to interact with a system and have it tell you, especially one that uses AI and advanced automation, tell you why it's making certain decisions. So, a good example for our systems, we have the capability to effectively have our individual sorting devices be more or less aggressive depending on how much material is flowing through it, the purity requirements of the offtake, and the level of contamination that is just within the material stream itself. And the system itself will automatically tune how aggressively it's sorting the materials in the stream. That though often comes with kind of that black box nature of a traditional operator wants to understand what's happening within their system and ideally control it as well. And so a lot of the large language model tools and agentic AI tools you can actually append to a advanced sorting system and gain insights as to why it's making certain decisions. Can also provide it feedback on whether or not it's doing a good job, and it will then be able to make modifications to its sorting capabilities, which is all I think extremely useful from a actual user interface perspective, where it doesn't take someone who is extremely skilled in software programming, for example, to provide feedback and actually manage a sorting system individually. At a more tactical level, though, I think the biggest benefit and still the area where we see the most growth opportunity for AI is in the actual material sensing side of things. I think one of my coworkers has coined the phrase like we have a generic trash sensor. So the use of computer vision and AI and the positive feedback loop of being able to train your neural net to identify new material is you're always able to keep up with changing packaging. Amazon introduces a new type of packaging that is brown but is not cardboard, for example. Not saying that that would happen, but that'd be pretty diabolical actually if that did happen. But
Leave it to Amazon to be diabolical.
yeah. But in that hypothetical situation, instead of having a screen or a set sorting system with an NIR camera that isn't able to correctly identify this packaging as the type of material it is, using computer vision and AI lets you adapt and train on new packaging and new types of commodities as they are, inevitably, I would say, introduced over the years and decades. The other thing that you can use AI for, which we're, I think, starting to see a much larger impact on the MSW sorting side than on the single stream side, is to actually identify contamination levels within material. So a lot of traditional sensors will struggle to either identify a specific type of plastic or metal if there's a lot of surface contamination on it, like a residue from a banana peel is stuck on top of a plastic bottle, or there's just a lot of like Murph juice or like leachate that's stuck on
Murph
containers.
juice.
Yeah. And that level of surface moisture and then also like multimodal packaging can make it difficult for sensor-based sorting devices to work if you don't pair it with a more traditional RGB camera and an AI-based system that can say, hey, not only is this a plastic bottle that has contamination as well, and so we actually may not want to necessarily sort that to a really high purity offtake. Maybe it goes to this offtake that requires a lower purity. And so I think the combination of being able to identify a wider variety of materials and also trying effectively seeing through the contamination level of those materials, and then also having a system that can adapt to changes in packaging over time are pretty critical for MSW processing, but then waste processing more broadly. And I would imagine AMP does not remain, one of the only of a few AI and computer vision companies in the waste industry over time. I fully expect there to be more companies that come along, and I would imagine computer vision and AI becomes a central piece of most MRFs and MSW processing facilities probably within 10 or 15 years from now, at least for new facilities.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like anytime I visit a MRF, it's always they show off like a computer sensing screen and like, okay, this is just how we censor what's going through the lines here. Here we are. I'm like, that's just normal now. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. It's really interesting. It provides you a ton of insights into the actual operation just based on understanding the material composition at different points in the facility as well. And I know for EPR, it's a big aspect of a lot of legislation surrounding that to actually understand down to the specific, supplier and manufacturer level, what percentage of the material actually ends up at a recycling facility. And then once it gets there, what percentage of that material actually gets recovered. And in my mind, there's kind of two options for approaching that problem. One is a lot of manual auditing and hand auditing of material in a facility. And then the other is having robust computer vision and AI-based systems that probably have some level of human oversight to start and then transition into fully automated systems that continually monitor everything that's going on inside plants.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that a little bit too. So with facilities that we are seeing labor shortages in the industry. The contamination is still happening. Rising costs are happening. Where do you see this kind of automation filling in those gaps with facilities, addressing those issues and recovery rates, efficiency? Like how are we pointing to one goal here when we deal with all these challenges?
Yeah, I think the material composition studies and understanding the actual composition of different waste streams is an easy target for automation. I think, hand sorts and or manual tracking of material purity and bale purity and offtake purity inside a facility are both very labor intensive, and then B, kind of in relation to that, also very costly to do. And using computer vision systems, once they're installed, they effectively work in perpetuity and provide you with real-time information about the composition of whatever they're tracking within the facility. And so if it's at the infeed of a facility, you understand the composition of everything that's coming into it. If you're actually auditing the material as it goes into a baler or is entering bunkers on the back end of a facility, then you understand the purity, you know, pretty much down to the tenth of percentage level of everything that's leaving your facility. And I think being able to sense all of that material and have material compositions in real time, mitigates the need for a lot of manual intervention for waste characterization studies. I think what's more powerful though is when you pair that type of insight with a actual dynamic sorting system. So, our facilities pretty heavily rely on our AMP jet, which is our version of an optical sorter. And the jets themselves are constantly receiving feedback from different computer vision systems within the facility, again, on how aggressive they should be in terms of recovery rate, the purity level that they need to hit. And pairing those two things together means that you have a closed loop system that can dynamically react to what is actually going on within it. And that feedback loop really drives higher recovery rates, higher purity of the offtakes within the facility. And in our facilities, typically the only manual touch point we have on the material is a pre-sort. If it is required, it's mainly for municipal solid waste sorting and less so on the single stream side of things. And so having these really cheap automated sorting devices with concrete feedback loops also means that you just have less manual sorting within a facility, and that helps stabilize the operation. It can reduce costs depending on where the facility is, and it just makes it an overall more reliable operation as a whole. So it's not necessarily one specific thing that is solved, but kind of the coalescing of all these things that really sets up a facility to be more robust to change and then also be more efficient at any given moment.
Well, if I know anything, these people want to reduce costs. So
Yes.
we're getting there.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So let's look ahead, 5 to 10 years. We've seen how this has grown so quickly in the 8 years you've been in AMP. Even before then, people who've been in the industry for 20 years are like, wow, this was just a fever dream 20 years ago. And now it's implemented, all this stuff that's going on. Where or what do you think of the modern recovery, like a MRF will look like in that time? And what role will AI and automation play in shaping that future?
Yeah, I think it's going to have a huge role. And I
Like
think
percentage wise, we're thinking like 80%, 90%, maybe. Like
of
really
MRFs that will have some sort of AI system,
something like that. Yeah.
I think probably. I think the eventual goal in my mind, just at a holistic level, is to get to the point where sorting any waste stream is more cost effective and provides more value than landfilling all of that
Hmm.
material. Obviously, the break point for when that happens is going to be dramatically different depending on where you are within the United States and then also where you are globally, just because the cost to landfill material varies so significantly. I know it's quite high where I am up in Boston and the New England area. But the ideal is to get to that break point where in any decision someone's making, it is a more economically viable pathway to add in some sort of waste material sorting and diverting and recovery facility as opposed to just putting it all in a landfill. And I think kind of by necessity, that type of future requires, I think we've mentioned it a couple times, but requires some level of generic trash sorting and sensing device. And I think, at least for the time being, computer vision systems and AI based systems really are that core sorting device that, when paired with additional sensors, provides you all of the necessary operating tools and then also sets of automation and cost reduction mechanisms to achieve as low cost as possible and produce as much revenue from a facility as possible. And so it's really tough to put numbers on the future, and I would say the future, especially now, is far more unpredictable than it would be otherwise. And I think in general, I'd say probably within 10 years, you probably do see well above 50% of facilities in the US get designed with some sort of AI and computer vision based system in it, whether it is doing operation and efficiency monitoring, or it is also actively influencing the sorting of the material directly. Um, and I think we talked about a lot of the reasons why that will be the case, but I think the biggest one is once that that switch gets flipped for different regions in the country where it becomes more economically viable to separate material and to recover material than to just landfill it. Then you effectively end up in an arms race to do that in all of the economically viable regions of the country and of the world. And I think that also just unlocks additional scale economies for all waste sorting technologies, not just AI. There's a definite possibility that the total amount of waste sorting projects and the tons that they process on an annual basis, increases by an order of magnitude 10 years from now, which I think is super exciting possibility as well, and expanding from the U.S. introducing single stream facilities in the last 50-ish years or so to then entering a new era of sorting all of the waste within the United States, I think is going to be a big step.
Hmm. Now, in your area, was there a recycler's remorse when everyone threw away Drake May jerseys and then decided he's good again? Uh-oh.
I personally did not have that remorse since I held off
Okay.
on getting one to start.
Smart,
But
but now.
yeah, maybe if we get like 5 or 6 Super Bowls out of him, like we did
My
the last
God.
great quarterback we had, then maybe I'll be signing up for a New Jersey.
How greedy can you get? Okay, let's. One last question for you, and this is to talk to the young professionals who are listening in, and if they're interested in combining the engineering roles, technology, sustainability to be able to build a career. What advice would you offer to them?
Yeah, I'll add the caveat that I'm also still like relatively young in my
Sure,
career.
but you're an award winner. You know everything now.
I don't know about that, but I would say I think the things that have surprised me most about entering the waste industry, and I think this is probably true of many environmentally impacting industries, is just the range of jobs that are available in it. And I think especially with the introduction of so much advanced technology into waste processing, again, a lot on the sorting side and then a lot on the organics processing side. I would say, like, if you are in any technical field at all, there is definitely a job within the waste industry that has the potential to be extremely highly environmentally impactful and exists. Whether you're a chemical engineer or a mechanical engineer or just a software engineer, the amount of technical roles that are becoming available in the waste processing industry is pretty crazy. And again, just the breadth of opportunities is becoming wider and wider by the day. And I think, again, something that is extremely exciting about the waste industry is it is extremely dynamic and changing, and has the opportunity to be an industry that becomes 10 or 100x more valuable within the next 20 years very feasibly. And I think that's just an extremely exciting place to be, since there are a lot of other industries where that is not the case, certainly. I think on a more tactical level, people love to talk about the work that they do. And so definitely don't be afraid to reach out to people that work at companies that you find interesting. And I think an interesting kind of sub realm within that is there are a lot of startups in the waste processing space nowadays. And very often, a lot of them are kind of aggregated to different venture capital groups or different private equity groups, or also investment from existing players in the waste industry like WM and Republic and others. And actually going and looking at those investment firms is a great way to see a whole long list of startups in the space, and being able to reach out to a ton of them at once and learn about what they do and what their trajectory is, I think can be quite useful, since I know it is often very difficult to find new and exciting companies within an industry. If you don't know where to start looking, it can kind of just feel overwhelming beyond just like a Google search and a
Hmm.
prompt to Gemini or ChatGPT on what's out there. Um, yeah, I think that those would be like the more tactical pieces of advice I think I have.
Great. Well said, Cam. Thank you for joining me today. If anyone wants to learn more about AMP, or sorry, AMP, let me take that again. I'm gonna do that again because I knew I would do it once.
I'm surprised I didn't do it during the interview.
All right, Cam. Well, thank you so much for that. If anyone wants to learn more about AMP, where can they go? Where can they reach out to you if they're interested?
Yeah, so our website is probably the best spot. So ampsortation.com. And I think if you still look up our old name, Amp Robotics, I am sure that you will get redirected to the same website. And I'm available on LinkedIn and over email. I'm not sure actually if my email gets shared coming out of this interview.
Just go to
Um,
LinkedIn.
yeah, just go to LinkedIn and message me. I'm a historically very poor user of LinkedIn, but I promise I will respond eventually. And yeah, no, I super appreciate you having me on and everyone who listened.
Excellent, Cam. Well, thank you and congratulations again.
Thank you very much.